Hey, deserving listeners, this is Chapter 3 in our deep dive on the Menendez brothers, in which I know nothing about the story, and Berto knows everything about it, and he's walking me through it and shocking me as I go. So let's continue with that. What do you say, Berto?
Let's do it.
This is the Psychology in Seattle podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Kirk Honda. I'm a therapist, and I'm also a professor.
My name is Humberto Castañeda, and I discover new colors.
That led us up to the murders themselves, it sounds like.
We're basically, because remember, it was 1988, the robberies happened, the house robberies. They have to move again. This is when they move to Beverly Hills. And Eric starts therapy because, hey, what's wrong with this kid, you know?
So Lyle wasn't required to go to therapy? Okay, because he wasn't convicted.
Yeah. Remember, Eric took the fall.
Right.
Okay, so late 1988, something interesting happens. Eric has a friend named Craig, and the two of them want to write a screenplay, or they're working on a screenplay. So they're collaborating on the screenplay, and the title is Friends. It features a wealthy young man who murders his parents to inherit their fortune. I'm not making this up. In 1988, Eric and his friend Craig were writing a script. Now, people write scripts, but anyways, it was a script specifically.
It's interesting. So for the people who listened to this episode, it's about a year ago-ish, I don't know, this podcast's company reached out to me to interview me about this case that was similar to this, and I ended up making, I think, an episode about this, that a woman, I think in Portland, if I'm not mistaken, in Oregon, she was a fiction writer and had been convicted of murdering her husband and had previously written a quote unquote fictional piece of how to murder your husband, essentially, and get away with it. I think it was literally called that.
Oh, wow.
And
it's kind of like OJ's If I Did It.
Well, no, because it was written before.
Right.
So it raises this question of, well, if an innocent rapper, for example, were to be put on trial and you were to use a song lyric that him talking about offing a competitor or something, it misunderstands the art form, right?
I mean, for one thing, Craig, the friend, the co-writer, didn't go on to murder his parents, but he was writing a thing about murdering, about a man who, a young man who murders his parents. In either case, this was, not disputed. And one gruesome detail is that Kitty, the mom, actually helped them type up the script.
Oh my God. So do we know anything about Eric's motivation, where his mind was at the time? Do we suspect that he might have actually been halfway planning this as well, or thinking about it?
So I'm going to say, based on what I know, and let's revisit this later in a later episode after you know all the stuff that I know. But based on what I know, I'm going to say subconsciously yes.
Okay.
I'm going to go subconsciously yes.
So if he were to take a truth serum at that moment and you were to ask him, is this some sort of indication you want to kill your parents? He would say no. This is just fictional.
He would say no.
But back in his mind, there was a motivation there of a fantasy that had its roots in earlier kinds of emotions.
That's right. That's what I would say.
Okay,
I see.
But we don't know.
Exactly.
We don't know.
Now, one thing is, this script was not admitted as evidence in the trial, which probably makes sense.
Yeah. So I think that's in line with other kinds of situations.
Right.
To the world, to the layperson, it's just like, oh my God, that is a smoking gun right there. But for people who know these kinds of things legally, they'll say, no, I mean, if you allow that, then, like the Key and Peele thing,
right?
It'll taint the jury, right? So it's
right.
It's just fiction. Yeah. I mean, so imagine if Eric hadn't actually killed his parents and you use that against him. That's just, it affects, the jury doesn't necessarily, even if you tell him this is just fiction.
He is on trial, but let's say he's innocent.
Right.
But then you feed that to the jurors.
Right. And even though you tell them this is just fiction, it infects the mind of the jury. And so that's why they don't let it.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. At least that's my understanding.
Okay. So now we're going to fast forward to August of 1989. So between late 1988 and August 1989, no one gets killed, but we can assume that, Eric's in therapy. Lyle
And
is
and this, if he aligns with me, given that he's almost my exact age, this is his senior year in high school, and Lyle, this would be his sophomore year in college.
Right. And he is still in college, even though, so he was suspended because of the thing, but he wasn't expelled. So, but now it's August 1989. August 19th, it's the day before. The day before the murders, the family, this is a Saturday, the family was relaxing. They went on a yacht. They're going to go on this is weird to me. They were going to go on a shark fishing trip.
Well, I think there are species of shark that are plentiful in the Pacific anyway, and they're not even particularly difficult to reel in. You know what I mean? They're probably not fishing like great whites and
right.
That kind of thing,
Given the context, though, I found it a little odd. Like, they're fishing for sharks the day before the murder.
Yeah, and they're expensive.
Yeah, like
it is. Yeah, like if you wrote it into a.
It might be on the nose, like really. Yeah. Does have to be shark fishing.
Right. That's not even a real thing. I mean,
right? No one shark fishes. Yeah. There's a lot of things about this whole story.
I know, right?
That seem contrived. Like, come on, man, really?
Yeah.
And the boat captain, it's not like a friend of theirs. So just whoever's captaining the boat, because they rented it, right? They testified later that there was tension during the outing. Lyle and Eric were keeping to themselves on one side of the boat. They did not participate in the fishing, apparently. Whereas, the dad was all about the fishing. I don't know. Okay. So that's kind of interesting. But knowing what we know now, what happened the next day, it's not so surprising that there would have been. It would almost be surprising if the day before they're laughing and beautiful family. Okay. So allegedly, there was a confrontation, a very heated confrontation at the house prior to this trip, maybe the day before or earlier that week. So
the boys alleged this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sadly, they're the only ones that can, but they claim that there was a big confrontation and that they were really upset. And here's one very important thing, is that they claim that Jose had gotten so frustrated with their misbehaviors and all their problems that he had said, "This is it. I'm taking you out of the will." Millions of dollars. This happened, again, allegedly. Now, we don't know if this discussion actually happened. We also don't know if Jose was actually going to take them out of their will. We don't know any of that stuff. But we do know for a fact that they claim, Eric and Lyle claim, that this confrontation happened and that he said he was going to take him out of their will.
Yeah. Was that all that they alleged? Because that's not reason to kill him.
That's what they alleged. Let me ask you a question, though, about the leaving out of the will and stuff like that. If you are trying to defend yourself for murder, would you think that saying that, well, but yesterday they claimed they would take me out of the will. What do you think, as a therapist, what kind of person might think that telling others that a justifiable reason was that they were left out of their will?
Right. I mean, it could be argued that even though it did happen, you might not even want to mention this to the lawyers or in court because it, if believed, gives a motive to kill and lie about things.
Yeah.
It certainly is no justification, for murder.
So again, the backdrop, the day before, they go on this trip on the water. There's reputedly they're not getting along, and they will claim later that there was this huge argument that happened leading up to this. Okay, now it is Sunday, August 20th, 1989. Now keep in mind that because of what the therapist has been telling Kitty, she's actually gotten a little afraid of her sons, reportedly. And
reportedly from the therapist?
Yeah. And because
like
of
the therapist in retrospect?
Yeah.
Or in the notes?
No, I think this was just what came out during trial, I guess. And also,
I mean, it's just so no one alive is a reliable narrator.
Right.
The therapist, no. Eric, and Lyle all have reasons to distort or lie.
Yeah. Now, keep in mind, there are other relatives, and they will come into play a little bit. But so she could have been talking to, her sister, for example.
Right.
Because one of the steps that allegedly she had taken recently or sometime before this is that the kids didn't have keys to the house. because she wanted to be the one to know when they were coming and going and open the door. But that could just be control. It could be whatever. But that's kind of one of the data points. Either way, it's Sunday night, and Jose and Kitty, as I mentioned in a previous episode, they are watching TV in their den. And Eric and Lyle have told them that they were going to go out to the movies. That's the idea. But instead, Eric and Lyle, and again, they admit this, so this is no longer like it's just what they've confessed. So they had previously purchased. So this wasn't like, let's go get the gun from the. No, they had bought. Here's all the steps they had taken. They had gone to a gun store that would sell them guns. They were upset because they needed a waiting time, blah, blah, blah. Either way, they went through a lot of steps to get guns. Okay, so now, trigger warning, I am about to describe gruesome events. So if you don't want to listen to this.
Let's take a break first.
Yep.
Give people a chance to think about it. And when we return, gruesome details.
Gruesome details.
All right, we're back from the break. Berto, take it away.
All right. Okay, so around 10 p.m. is when this happens. Sunday night, 10 p.m. Parents are on the couches. They come in, and this is close range with these shotguns. Jose was shot first by Eric. He was shot in the head. So I guess good news for Jose. He probably went fairly quickly. You'll see depictions like in one of the dramatizations. There was a recent one done by Netflix, which we'll actually talk about. Javier Bardem is playing Jose, and he stands up and he confronts them, and then he gets shot. Apparently, that's not how that happened. At least according to both their account as well as the forensic accounts and stuff. Either way, it seems like he was probably killed first, shot in the head, as you can imagine, destroys his brain, and then, by the way, if I laugh, it's like kind of like the nervous, I'm telling this horrific story laugh. It's not because I think these things are funny or because murder is funny. So I've been accused of that before. Like, I can't believe you laughed during that. Okay. In total, they fired 15 shotgun blasts. We were talking about this like in my naive, right, certainly before I shot guns, but certainly as a kid, even as a teenager, whenever you watch stuff with shotguns, in my mind, it's like the bird, what do they call it? Bird shotguns. So, because, in shows, sometimes they shoot someone in the butt. They're like, oh, whatever. So I would have imagined that you shoot someone with a shotgun and it's like, yeah, it's ouch, but you got to go to the doctors. No, these things destroy you. They destroy you.
Even lower gauge or lighter gauge, I don't know the right term. Shotguns are game enders with just one shot.
Right. 15.
Not all the time, but
right.
But yeah, it is kind of weird. What it might indicate is that they weren't good aim. They weren't a good aim with the mom. Or she was moving too much or something.
Right.
But which you could imagine, right? You're nervous. You don't know what you're doing.
That what I will say though, I'm not saying that they knew much about anatomy or medicine, but the description was that they basically mutilated the bodies. The cops said it was a gruesome scene, unlike they've seen before.
Do you know specifically how many times the dad was shot?
No, not in my notes, I'm sure.
But it was multiple times?
Yeah, because they shot 15 times total, including after the headshot. That
Right.
was not the last shot to the dad.
Right, so it could have been a glancing blow to the head or something, and more shots need. No,
his brain was destroyed.
So that lends us to, in an earlier chapter, I was talking about how there's a phenomenon within murder cases that is seen as a theme when you have these kinds of family murders, which are motivated by emotion, that the act of murder will have a lot more intensity to it and a lot of unnecessary injuries, because the murderer isn't just trying to kill, they're trying to humiliate, they're trying to vent their anger and frustration towards the person. So to hear that the father was initially shot, it sounds like by Eric, because the first shot, right?
Yeah.
In the head, and it's pretty obvious that he's out, and there would be further gunshots over the whole body, and you're saying that it was clear that they were shooting in various different locations of the body. You're thinking, well, did they not understand anatomy? Well, I would take a guess and say that most people understand that shooting someone like in the crotch isn't necessarily going to be a kill shot. You know what I mean? Especially after you've already shot him in the head. So it lends itself to that idea that they were doing it out of anger in part. Now, does that mean that there was abuse happening and they were getting revenge? It could, but it also could be that you have a psychopathic pair of kids who, sadistic, murderous psychopathic kids who just didn't like their dad for normal reasons. Like the dad was absent and maybe too critical, but certainly not justifying of murder. Because that is the thing that we would ask ourselves, and maybe there is never a threshold, but for some people there is a threshold, right? Of, like in the case of Munchausen by proxy. Do you know this case? There's a Netflix documentary. There's been some new chatter about
I know
it.
the phenomenon, but I don't know the case you're talking about.
Oh, well, I think her name is Gypsy Rose. It's an interesting documentary, actually.
I know you did a thing about this, right?
Yeah,
Gypsy
and it's a pretty severe case, but a pretty right down the middle case of Munchausen by proxy by the mom. And the kid conspired with her boyfriend, and they killed the mom. And for a lot of people, when they learn the full breadth of the case, because the mom did horrific harm to that child from almost the day she was born, to the point where the kid was bound to a wheelchair, was injected with numerous chemicals and drugs, and had surgeries, none of which were necessary at all.
Because the whole Munchausen by proxy, normally it would be like if you have Munchausen syndrome, you think there's all these things wrong with you and stuff. But by proxy is like you think someone else is?
Not you think, but you will convince others. You
others,
know that you don't. And by proxy, you're...
Oh, okay. So it's not just a hypochondriac thing. You know that it's not real, but you will... Okay.
Yeah. The perpetrator of the Munchausens knows that it's not true.
Okay.
And are doing it compulsively for attention, essentially.
Got it.
So for a lot of people, when they learn the full story, then they think, well, Gypsy Rose's motivation to kill her mom, given and how cloistered and controlled she was,
right?
And the mom could have killed her many times prior, almost did probably, could kill her after. And given the way the mom behaved, for some people they would say, well, I don't know, like if there's ever a time where it's justified for a child to kill their parent, this is one of them. So as I'm hearing the case, that is that question mark, right? Is there any data that could sway people, the audience that's listening right now, to think, well, it's never justified, but in this case, it's like but we've heard nothing. We've heard nothing. They
have to move though.
Yeah, but we also don't even know if, we speculate the dad was working a lot. It's not hard to imagine. But we don't even know if that's true. We also don't know what kind of father he was when he got home.
But he threatened to cut them out of the will.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so you're right, and that is true. So, all right, so they fired.
Sorry, keep interrupting, but
no worries.
I assume that if the dad was abusing the boys in a systematic, horrific, ongoing way, they would have brought that up in their defense, at the very least, as a mitigating factor for their sentencing or something. And is this a spoiler? Do they ever?
We'll have to get to the trial.
Okay,
I don't know what happens in the trial.
Okay.
I just copy paste stuff off the internet and read it real time.
And then you erase your brain afterwards. Yeah. Okay. All right. Sorry.
Okay. So they're firing. The mom, of course, also gets hit, but she does not get killed right away. In fact, she is screaming and she is trying to get away. She is falling to the ground, dragging herself, trying to get away. They run out of bullets. They go back outside, reload.
So, not to be super graphic, but and there's variability regarding gauge of shotgun and also aim and whatnot. They're nervous, Yeah. And some people could be imminently dying, but still able to kind of crawl around and say things. But it's possible, just hearing these details, if there's 15 shots with 5 to 10 of them going into the mother, and she's still, somewhat mobile, it lends itself to the possibility that they were purposely not killing her so they could, I don't know, I'm just going to throw it out there.
Or there's that, and then there could be maybe they were subconsciously not wanting to kill her. I don't know. I don't know. That's never come
Struggling
up.
a little bit more.
That's never come up. Like at least I didn't find anything from them or anyone else about it.
Okay.
What we do know is that they went back outside, and then I think Lyle goes back inside to finish off the mother.
So that's that. You think that?
Oh, I mean, like in my notes here, I'm pretty sure Lyle is the one that goes back inside.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of an interesting detail.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure because what happens is that, like, they run out of ammo. They both go outside to the trunk to reload. But Lyle is the one that kind of takes charge and is like, I'm going to go back in. One note is I told you Eric shot first, but the report from them is actually that Lyle told Eric he had to shoot first so he wouldn't back down. So Lyle, at least in this regard, was definitely the one sort of calling. Okay.
Literally.
So now both parents are, as far as anyone can tell, who knows exactly the moment of death there, but like they're basically dead. They have been shot so many times. So now the two of them they move into cover-up mode. The first thing they do is Lyle tells them they have to pick up the shells. Now, I don't know how many shows they had watched, and I guess this was pre the OJ trial even, so maybe they weren't too worried about DNA and stuff, but like they didn't wear gloves, they wore their clothes, like there wasn't a lot of what's that, Law and Order SVU precautions taken, but they did think that, hey, let's pick up these. That's the first thing they did. The second thing is they knew, or they had maybe already had a plan that they were going to go get rid of the guns. The other thing is they're like, okay, we need an alibi here. So they made a plan that they were going to go watch a movie. So, that way they could be like, hey, we were at a movie. Here's our movie tickets. So they go and they try to buy tickets for like a 9 p.m. show because they want to have already been at the movie. But the movie's already going, and they apparently either can't get the right showing. So the tickets they end up buying are for a later show. So then they're like, oh, this is not going to help our alibi at all. So they scrap that plan and instead decide, okay, well, here's what we're going to do. They called a buddy of theirs, I think they already called a buddy of theirs, to meet them at this other thing, which is a taste of LA, which was like, wine tasting and food and things like this. And then they also thought, hey, we'll be seen by people there. So they went there. In one of the depictions, the Netflix one, they're seen there. I don't know if they did this or not, but they're like, oh man, it's been 4 hours already? Wow, time flies or whatever. But the point is that was their alibi. Their plan was, hey, we will be seen at this public location. So they did that. They were also expecting that they were going to come back and the cops were going to be there and they were going to be horrified and what happened, right? But when they returned home, nothing. So they're like, oh. Turns out that the neighbors, because later the neighbors reported having heard things that they thought were fireworks. But, these are big houses in Beverly Hills. So inside of a big house with big areas outside, the shotgun, as loud as that would be, and especially, the other thing is the neighbors said, well, but there were so many, we just assumed, because if it was one, maybe they're like, what was that?
Yeah.
But it sounded like fireworks to them.
Yeah, it was the same. For me, if I hear gunshots in Seattle, and it's like bang, 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 and it's the same gun,
yeah,
I always assume, and who knows if it's true, but I always assume it's just someone shooting in the air.
Right.
Also, if I heard gunshots that seemed close by and I went outside to look around and I didn't see anyone running for cover or injured or screaming or anything, what am I supposed to assume? Yeah. That someone next door is killing their family members?
Yeah, right.
Like in cold blood? That wouldn't be the first thought I would have. Yeah. So I don't really blame the neighbors for not.
No, totally.
Yeah.
And But so then what happens is that they're like, oh, okay, what do we do now? So they come up with a new plan, which is, can you guess what their new plan is?
So what was the question? So
they're back.
So they're back home, and
cops never showed up,
and it's like midnight.
What do we do?
It's like It's like late at night.
We have dead parents in the living room.
They claim either that they were in another part of the house and they didn't hear it, and someone must have broke it. So they try to stage like a break-in, or they claim that they were there when the burglars broke in and they beat themselves up and tie themselves up, and then they call the cops.
That might have worked for them, actually. So, no, they basically just say, like, okay, plan A.2, we just got back and we've discovered their bodies. So we're going to call 911 because we're horrified because we found our dead parents. So they call 911 and there's a recording of the call.
Okay, so what we're watching here is a video on YouTube that has the audio of the 911 call, and there's a video, I think, of a police entering the house the next day to film stuff. So I think that's what we're seeing here.
Okay.
Beverly Hills emergency.
Yes, police.
What's the problem? What's the problem? What's the problem?
Someone killed my parents.
Pardon me?
Someone killed my parents.
What? Who? Are they still there?
Yes.
The people...
No.
Were they shot?
Hey, man,
Were they shot?
Yes.
They were shot?
Yes.
102 response, 722 North Elmont.
What happened?
So they call 911 at like midnight-ish. The police arrive, and then later an investigator arrives with a video camera and starts filming, and they get video of the dead parents in the living room.
That's right.
Pretty gruesome.
Yeah, so I had two thoughts about the call. First of all, whatever the reason for them killing their parents, I do imagine, you tell me your thoughts, but I was thinking it's probably not too hard to fake desperation and emotion if that's happened, whether you did it or not. But I don't know.
Yeah, well, so this sounds bad, but with all the deep diving on true crime that I've done, and also just a consumer of true crime podcasts and YouTube channels occasionally, I'm not really into true crime a lot, but I would say I have an average interest in it, that occasionally I just passively absorb different examples of these 911 calls and will note what seems more credible than others, right? But also, very occasionally, I'll think, well, what would I do if I was in that situation? Which sounds really bad. I mean, do you ever do that? Help me out here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So along those lines, when I think about how to fake, but I will say that, again, 2020, and it's easy to say, oh, that sounds so fake because we know, but it's not on the scale of faked 911 calls. This isn't as bad as the others. I would say this one's at least above average.
Yeah.
You know, you'd be screaming, you'd be kind of confused, nonsensical. If you just walked in the house, you know, because the other thing, I guess, is I have heard legitimate 911 calls from people who didn't commit the murders, right? And the way that they sound, it's usually pretty frantic, and they usually are, you know, depending on the situation, they're usually talking while they're doing things, especially if another person is there. So it sounds like Lyle's the one.
I don't know. I'm opening the door. No, 1 second. I'm just trying to get the dog because the dog's in the, you know, like that.
Or they pull the phone away from their face and they're talking to someone else, like Eric. You know, you can hear Lyle, Eric, no, and so, you know,
yeah.
I don't know. What's your take?
My take is actually, I thought I would buy it. I would buy it.
Okay.
You know, if I didn't have any other context, I would buy it. But also, I was thinking, at least for Eric, I wasn't so sure he was even acting to an extent.
Okay.
Like, I was like, I mean, he did just shoot his parents.
Yeah, right.
So I don't know, but it is
Meaning you might have a more sympathetic.
No. I'm just saying, like, he might be having an actual emotion.
Because in the background we can hear Eric screaming. Or
So
something.
whether or not whether or not they killed him on purpose and the blah blah, it's still in my mind, it's still possible that Eric in that moment still freaks out, anyways. And so that what we're hearing might actually be legitimate freak out. It doesn't change. They're obviously guilty and all these, but I was thinking, like, why does it sound plausible? And it's probably a combination of, like, to your point, you know, that's frantic 911 calls. You know, it's on
and in relation to my grief book, I can tell you that especially after a gruesome, you know, for people to legitimately come upon a scene like this. There are a wide variety of reactions. You know, think Amanda Knox,
right,
having realized that her roommate had died in Italy, had been brutally murdered. Right afterwards, she's with her new boyfriend, and they're cuddling and kissing while the police are filming and suspecting that she did something because she's not doing what Lyle is doing right now. And Amanda Knox has been proven up and down, including by the Supreme Court in Italy, that she didn't do it. So the reactions available to us as humans is across the board. Literally every reaction is available to us. You just never know what you're going to do. And you could go through various different phases, and you can also feel something without showing it on your face and vice versa. Whenever I consume true crime and they get to this part where they analyze the 911 call, I'm always like, well, you just can't tell. Someone could be completely stone cold, calm, describing what they're going through and still have not killed their parents.
Right. Yeah. So the first thought I had was like, either way, I was like, yeah, I would buy that. And two, it was a little odd, and maybe it's because it's Beverly Hills, but I was thinking that the operator's reaction was a little odd because it was like,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah.
Who shot them? I'm like,
Yeah.
well, I don't know. We're about to find out.
Well, I noticed that too, but I wonder if the professionalism around 911 operators wasn't at the same level. I mean, that's my impression,
Yeah.
is that everything within police work has become way more professional. Even in a big city like LA,
Sure.
things are much more buttoned up throughout the 90s and the aughts, where you could have a 911 operator in the late 80s who just hasn't absorbed or been trained or expected to be really by the numbers. Because today you call 911 because you'll hear the kind of 911 calls today. And although they might be confused as like what happened, they have a cadence to them that's almost like military in a way. So yeah.
Yeah. So I found that interesting that it was like, what? Wait, who? Wait, who shot them?
Yeah.
Like, what? Okay. But anyway, so this happens. They call 911. Cops show up.
But first, let's take a break.
Okay.
The rest of this episode will be for patrons. If you want to hear this whole chapter, then become a patron. Otherwise, please take care of yourself because
You deserve it.